Welcome. I am Fred Wellman, host of On Mars FP Wellman. I may look familiar because I was here last week looking the same clothes, same setup. I'm joining you today because I did have surgery this week, okay? And I'm very much stoned, I guarantee it. But I wanted to introduce this video. This is a show we actually ran a couple weeks after the election. And we're doing a repeat. We don't often do repeats, but I wanted to repeat this one because it actually published the same night as the Tyson-Paul fight. And a lot of folks didn't see it, and that's cool. I get it. That was a busy night on the internet. They crashed Netflix, for God's sake. But it's a really important episode. In this, we talked about something I'm calling diverse, mass diverse media. It's an idea that we need to be everywhere. We need to be speaking to people everywhere they are. And I use Donald Trump's efforts. We've since found out that since I aired this show originally, this interview originally, that he actually did over 100 podcasts during his campaign over 2 years of every kind, from wrestling to comedy to whatever you can think of. And it mattered, I think, in a lot of ways. I think we all can admit that in some ways he reached a lot of people that weren't normally reached. We know this because we've now found out that especially young men, Gen Z, went plus 13 to Donald Trump, according to exit polls. That's a significant jump. We have to find the answers for that. But in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what was the messaging. And it's not just the message itself. It's how we get that message to the right people and what we can learn from what our opponents did and how we can use that again. I think the Democrats are learning. We've seen President Biden just this week alone go on the MeidasTouch network, right here on the MeidasTouch network, and others. So there is learning going on at the highest reaches of our party, and I'm thrilled to hear it, thrilled to see it. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and rewatch the show again. I had a great conversation with Run for Something, and none of this has changed, folks. We have now 31 states having a local elections, 31 states having a local and statewide elections this cycle, this year, 2025. And we have to get people to run. The deadline for running in school board races, I think here in Missouri, is next month. Okay, so if you want to run for something, I got just the guest to talk to you about it, just the place to go to learn more. But this is our opportunity. We start now taking our country back. Do you want to see the disaster of a pending government shutdown or other things going on with the President Elon Musk and his people? Or do you want to fight back? I want to fight back. So with that, thank you for joining us. I know it's a repeat of a show, but I appreciate being our community. I'm sure we'll give you an update on how I'm doing health-wise. I'm sure it's going to go great. If not, it was good knowing you. In the meantime, thanks for everything. Again, I'm Fred Wellman. You're on the On Mars channel. Let's catch up with this show you may have missed.
But it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're, the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put them in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up and you hear things that you're saying, wow, this is not going to work out too well.
That's Donald Trump on the 3 hours he spent on the Joe Rogan Experience just a few weeks ago. It was a very big deal. He went on the most popular podcast in the country, and it got a lot of views. I mean, let's be honest. We're going to have a very honest conversation about that today. Many people really question the utility of spending 3 hours on a bro podcast. But here's the thing. It wasn't the only one. He did more than that, as a matter of fact. Here, his appearance on Barstool Sports, the Bussin' with the Boys podcast.
That's why I think there's like the positives of you doing more long form stuff. People get to see you in a different light compared to how everybody clips up, tries to get the clickbait, tries to get the headlining stuff in the mainstream media.
I like doing stuff like this. I like it. I like conversation. I don't seem to get myself in much trouble. When she does it, every time she does it, they say she's stupid. She's stupid. I mean, they tried to get away with her not doing it, which is always a bad sign, frankly. And, well, they did it with Biden. They kept him in a basement, but they were able to do that because of COVID. They could say, oh, he wanted to protect. And then when I debated him, we had a debate that, did you watch the debate with Biden?
We did.
Did you think he did well?
No, I would say the most of the world would agree he did not do well.
Yeah.
That's a sports podcast. Pretty level-headed conversation, wasn't it? And then he went on. Here's his, the funny thing is he did this appearance on Andrew Schultz's Flagrant podcast, which created this memorable clip that I'm pretty sure I shared somewhere.
I do a lot, but I always refer him back to the simplicity of McDonald's. She lied about McDonald's. She lied about many things, and she's a liar. There should be some kind of a rule when they know it's a lie, you can't do a commercial on it. But this is a thing that's going to end in 29 days, so they can say what they want. I have a hard time doing it to them because I'm basically a truthful person. But and frankly, she's given me so much ammunition. I don't really have to. I mean, she's a radical left lunatic.
Basically honest man, which isn't actually even true either, but at least he admits he's not completely honest man. And, Andrew got a laugh out of it. We all got a laugh out of it. He did a lot of these. Here's I'm going to do this last one, which we also laughed about at the time, but I'll explain.
We're not journalists, and
I turned down 60 Minutes, and I'm doing your stupid show.
And you're doing a professional wrestling podcast instead.
Okay. He's doing a professional wrestling podcast, The Undertaker's podcast, which also reaches millions. Those shows, all of those shows, as ludicrous as it seemed at the time, and even now, to be honest, they reached millions of people. Millions. He skipped 60 Minutes, much to everyone's chagrin and complaining. But in the end, he reached millions of people with that. So we have to ask, do you think it worked? Do you think that appearing on these many podcasts was actually a terrible idea? You know who didn't? The people who voted for him in the end. We lost. So we're going to talk about that. We do need to understand what happened. I've said now in a couple of our shows and on my Substack that I'm not going to do a lot of the finger pointing or the navel gazing, but we do need to move forward. And we're going to talk about that in this show. What's next? I'm excited to talk about what's next. I had a great guest coming on later to talk about what's next. But we all do understand, we have to understand why our messages didn't reach the people they were supposed to. Why do many people think the Democrats, and especially Kamala Harris, one of the most pro-worker candidates we've ever had, the Democrats who saved union pensions, the Democrats who, the first Democratic president or the first president in history ever to walk a picket line with a union, why was there this idea that they were not pro-worker or for the regular guy, yet Donald Trump gave the impression he was? Think about the clips I just showed you. Do you think that's a regular guy? I know, and he's not, but again, context matters in politics. Context matters in messaging. So we got a lot to talk about. You're in the right place. As always, I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP1. Right here, you're in the right place. We're in a lot of places. Let's get on with the show. Okay, welcome. I had to torture you with some clips of Donald Trump on podcast, but I want you to see reality as it's me. We can't hide our heads. If you guys have ever watched the show for a while now, I'm not one of those guys who's going to try and cushion things or fluff you up. I hope not, at least. And I'm telling you right now, we need to learn from our lessons. So the dust is settling a bit now on the election. We're starting to figure out what happened and what didn't happen. We are finding now going on a week and a half, going on 2 weeks now, that it wasn't actually a landslide for Donald Trump, the Republicans. It is going to end up being one of the thinnest popular vote margins in recent memory. But he got the Electoral College and they took control. We did find out just now that they have taken control of the House of Representatives with a very thin margin, which is getting thinner as Donald Trump poaches congressmen to go into his cabinet. As you know, Matt Gaetz resigned suddenly and was nominated to be this attorney general, which is crazy. But then we found out that that's because the ethics committee is getting ready to drop their report on him on Friday, which I haven't seen yet. It's a lot of crazy going on right now. But the story of the election is not necessarily going to be who voted and who was influenced, but who stayed home. That's what we're seeing. A lot of Democrats stayed home. We're going to have to figure that out. Why? And I have some theories, and we'll figure those out. And smarter people don't figure those out. We'll probably have them as guests in the show eventually. Right now, my focus, as you guys know, if you follow me, is we have a lot going on. This isn't over by any stretch of the imagination. We have to fight Donald Trump's terrible policies. We have to fight his terrible nominations. And then we're going to have to start taking back our democracy. And we're going to have to do a lot of things at once. We're going to have to figure out what happened. We're going to have to move forward at the same time. And we're going to have to learn the key lessons from what happened so that we can move forward effectively. For me as a communicator, as a person who was, I was a public relations guy for a long time. I was a spokesman in the Army after I was a pilot for 18 years. I've been talking about communications for a while. And as a communications, a guy who studies it, the messaging didn't reach the people it was supposed to reach, right? It's clear now that the messages of was a very effective campaign for the most part, and she only had 100 days. And look, there's a lot of reasons those messages didn't reach people. One of those being that we effectively had a little over 100-day campaign. There's not a lot of time to do things. But having said that, we can't walk away from the facts. Donald Trump ran for 3 years, and he did things like a bro podcast tour. And a lot of us were wondering at the time, and I kind of thought, and I had this little feeling in the back of my head, it was right. I was urging our elected officials to do shows like this one right here. For those who don't know, the show we did about the January 6th, if you remember, about a month and a half ago, we did a show, that incredible new documentary clips about January 6th. That show right here on the MeidasTouch network ended up getting over 900,000 views. It's our biggest show ever. So people are watching your shows. I would love you guys to comment when you get your chance. If you comment on the show, are you a cord cutter? How old are you? You know, I mean, because I tell audiences, I've spoken now a few times about how our audience here at On Democracy is an older audience, and many of you are cord cutters, and you're getting your news from places like YouTube and podcasts now, as opposed to traditional media. I haven't watched 60 Minutes in ages, except for a few clips. That is the way it is. And I came up with a term for this week. I'm calling it mass diversified media. Okay. And what I mean by mass diversified media, I'm going to coin that term. Matt, write it down. Mass diversified media is that now, while we do have mass media, it's diversified. It's not just one channel. A lot of people want to say, well, they've got Fox News and OAN, but I'm going to tell you guys a secret. It isn't just Fox News and OAN. It is Theo Von. It is, unfortunately, Joe Rogan. It is all these places where comms are. And it's going to be much harder if we go forward to reach the audiences we need to reach, because they're not watching, they're not even seeing the TV ads. We spent millions on TV ads that I guarantee you were never seen by an overwhelming majority of the people who voted. And I know this breaks your heart, because politics, the industry is built around those things, but it's really hard. And PR people, comms people need to figure out that's not just a matter of getting on one place anymore. Those days are over. There's not going to be a home run hit, the MSNBC hit that changes the world. It's just not, because that's not where your audience is going to be. It is going to be doing little bitty podcasts like this one. It is going to be doing a lot. And if you guys remember, a bunch of our representatives got that. You saw the conversations. You saw him with Jared Huffman from California. You saw him with Eric Swalwell's been on this show. Abigail Spanberg's been on this show. One of my favorites was Greg Landsman. If you guys watched the Hot Seat interviews, Greg Landsman came on. He was running in Ohio. And Greg ran, I will put this up on the screen, but Greg ran a thread on X Twitter. God bless Twitter and his rip Twitter. But before as it dies, Greg Landsman wrote a thread about why he succeeded in a pretty purple, almost red district in Ohio. And point number 5, I'll read it to you. Point number 5 was, we also have to do media that reaches everyone beyond legacy media, and do podcasts, jump on YouTube channels and shows, even the ones that may be less friendly. When we go on them, be normal and speak honestly. Have some fun connecting with new audiences, because it makes you human. And even as much as I despise Donald Trump, it was kind of funny and interesting. It was interesting seeing him talk to Theo Von about cocaine, of all things. Was it presidential? I don't know. But he reached a lot of people that normally wouldn't be reached. And Greg Landsman got it. That's why he went on. His people reached out to us. So he's got some very smart comms people working for him. I would love to see more of our political comms people get it, because I got to tell you guys, if we're being just nakedly honest, I can't tell you how often I pitch elected officials' staffs to get them to come on this show with all of you fine people, and their young comms people pat me on the head and say, "Oh, that's cute." You know what I mean? You got a cute little podcast. How many viewers do you get? What's your reach? They literally assess me. And I'm going to be very honest, it's going to get me in trouble. The White House did that. Every time I called, they literally wanted me to go through my reach, my views, my audience numbers. Just talk. That's my advice to political candidates. That's my advice to organizations. That's my advice to elected officials. You see Jared Moskowitz everywhere for a reason, because he gets it. Maxwell Frost. You see these guys everywhere because they get it. I hope senators get it, and maybe even presidential candidates get it, because they're not talking to us. So that's one piece. Now, the other piece I want to talk to about before we bring our guest on is, we still have power. Here in Missouri, the Democrats have done a brilliant job of fighting within a super minority. They are facing, they've got a lot of power, even knowing the Republicans could literally keep on carrying on business here in Missouri if the Democrats walked out and never showed up again, because Missouri doesn't have a law where they have to be present. So there's some lessons to be learned for our new Congress and our new Senate from places like Missouri, from my friend Crystal Quaid, who was the minority leader for many years. Crystal figured it out. And one of the key things she figured out is that the Republicans, guys, we've talked about this before, they hate each other almost as much as they hate us. Let's be honest. You've seen them almost come to fistfights. Okay. And they're going to have a little honeymoon period at the beginning, but it's not going to be long before the MTG starts making people mad again, before Boebert makes people mad, before Tommy Tuberville does his usually Tommy Tuberville thing. And the next thing you know, they're going to be fighting each other. And that's where good leadership comes in. Now, here's what's going to happen on our part as Democrats, especially as progressives. We're going to have to allow our elected officials to work with them a little bit. And I know it's uncomfortable. But you got to be honest, when the Republicans did their thing for so long where all they did was obstruct, it didn't do them any favors in the end because laws passed. The Infrastructure Act passed. ACA passed, okay? Obstruction doesn't necessarily work. So we're going to have to figure out ways to work together. And we're going to have to allow our elected officials to do just that. Okay, so that's one other thing. And the last thing we'll talk about, and I'm ready, our guest is getting ready to come on, is the fact that, as I've mentioned before, and here, let's throw this graphic back up again, Matt, before we bring our guest on, is that even in an authoritarian democratic country, okay, there's still elections. We have 30 states having elections, 2 states having Supreme Court elections, 2 states having governor and statewide elections. That matters. And that starts as early as February 11th of next year, literally 3 months from now. And that's going to be in Oklahoma as well as 3 other states. So I'm excited to invite our guest on. Let's go ahead and take a pause with our sponsor, and then we'll bring our guest on and talk about what we've got to do next to take this country back. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guides to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even your stress management. Not that I have stress in my life. Now, all you have to do is breathe in your Lumen first thing in the morning. You'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe in before you go on your workouts, before you go for a meal. You know exactly what's going on in your body in real time, and Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So look, your metabolism is your body's engine. We all know this. You probably learned this in health class, right? It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. I've been tracking macros and nutrients and nutrition for years as I try to maintain my health as I age. Because your metabolism is the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, better moods even, if you will. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health right in your hand. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Fred. You'll get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/Fred for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring our show this week. We really appreciate you. And man, it's a great device. All right, well, let's welcome our guest, co-executive director of Run for Something, Rocketto. He's progressive political operative, 15 years of experience. I mean, my God, I was looking at your resume, brother. Campaign management, grassroots organizing, data analytics. You've had some really cool campaigns, including Julian Castro's campaign, man. Welcome to the show. Welcome to MeidasTouch, brother. We're glad to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Really pumped to be here.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with what you guys do at Run for Something, tell us a little bit about Run for Something, your mission, what you guys been doing.
It's really simple. We recruit and support young, diverse folks who are running for state and local office. We don't do anything federal, so no congressional, no Senate, no statewide stuff. So we don't do anything at the governor's level. We do everything that is local. We do everything that is young people.
Well, there you go. And I talked about before the break, we've got 30 states having elections, local elections starting as early as February 11th. Okay, with Oklahoma, I think Illinois. There's some really big races and important races. Big cities are coming, but more really small ones. I mean, how important are those local elections in your view, especially with what we just faced for the last week, the switch in our democratic system, if you will. How important are local elections in your view?
Yeah, I mean, it isn't hyperbole to say that our local electeds are going to be the tip of the spear for everything that comes next over the next, fingers crossed, 4 years, that's just 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different conversation for a whole different day. These are the folks who are going to refuse to prosecute doctors at the DA level if they perform abortions in their counties and cities. These are the folks who are going to refuse to coordinate with ICE when they start enacting mass deportations. These are the folks who make decisions about, like your water and the garbage and when it gets picked up and whether potholes in your neighborhood get filled.
Yep.
These are the people who are going to make decisions ultimately and, like around your children's education. And so these are the most important races that exist. It isn't to say the federal work and the federal stuff isn't important. It is to say that if we're going to fight back against the Trump administration, it starts at the local level right now.
Right. And I often say it's about taking our country back in another way too, right? It's about, we do know that it's where people start in politics many times, right? It's the city council member who then becomes a state rep, who then becomes a governor or becomes a senator. In many ways, it's a training ground for our future, isn't it?
I mean, if you look at, for example, President Biden, he started as a city council member. If you look at Vice President Harris, she started as the DA in San Francisco. If you look at Barack Obama, he started as a state senator in Illinois. So, all of our folks, not all of them, but many of our folks and the last folks who have run for president, with the exception of Hillary Clinton, all really started at the local level. And I think we're just going to see that continue. That's the kind of thing you want. You want people to work their way through the process to see, it helps weed them out.
Right.
Otherwise we get reality TV stars who haven't ever really done anything in their careers getting to be president. And, I think we on the left have an obligation to be better than the other side. Like, we shouldn't, just because Donald Trump is the president and he just got reelected and is a reality TV star, doesn't mean we should be doing that. We should be putting people out there who actually know what governing looks like and have like a really deep understanding of what it looks like to create impact in their own local communities.
And that's so key, right? I mean, I've worked a couple congressional races now, and I often tell my house, these guys, especially you get somebody like, just my friend Eugene Vindman. Eugene came into the scene from a national security viewpoint, but in the end, when you run for the House, it's a local job. I mean, it's a local job with a national portrait. You know what I mean? And it is important. People want to know how you're going to fix the freaking highway, how you're going to get bridges built, and how you're going to get things done. And you're right, working at a city council level or otherwise, you learn very quickly constituent relations and what matters. Because, by the way, when you go to dinner, they're going to line up at the table to ask you questions, aren't they?
They are, and like, you show up in your own grocery store,
right?
And like people recognize you. You go into your grocery store, they recognize you, and they're gonna tell you why they're mad.
Yep.
Or they'll tell you why they think something you did was great. And I think being able to get that kind of feedback directly from your folks is super important. And I also think that there is a layer of democracy here that makes it even more special, which is it's really about the idea that these folks are out there having one-on-one conversations with voters and constituents on a daily basis. And they're able to touch people in ways that a presidential campaign never can. Honestly, in the ways that a congressional campaign never can, because they've got over 100,000 people like that they're trying to talk to, the way that a Senate campaign can't. when you're really out there and you're also thinking about the mechanics of campaigning, these are the folks who are having one-on-one conversations on the doors. And what we know is that the most effective conversation that somebody can have is between a candidate and a voter. Like those are the most effective conversations that we can have. So not only is there sort of like the good aspect and sort of like the democracy piece of this that's really important, there's also just the winning part of it, which is like, if you really think about it, these folks are like, they're organizers. They're organizers in their own communities, and they're turning out voters that we might not talk to, that we definitely aren't talking to otherwise.
Right. And often these are nonpartisan, they're political, if you will, but they're nonpartisan local. Like here in Missouri, they're nonpartisan positions. I know in Georgia, I actually briefly ran for mayor of beautiful Peachtree City, Georgia, until they threw a war and I had to drop out. But that was it, right? You do learn very quickly how to, it's not necessarily going to be your party that's going to carry you across the line. You're going to have to work for people. They want to see you to do things for them, results. We have I live in a small town in the suburbs of Missouri. The guy who just won mayor was a city council member before that. And he was really well known for running a newsletter to his constituents saying, hey, by the way, that vacant restaurant in the corner has been there for a year. We all hate. It's just got bought, right? It's just the dumbest things, but it's like, that is great information that comes to local level. And it's great training, again, like I keep saying, for the future. Because like I said, today's city council member is going to be, maybe when we finally take this government back in 8-10 years, is going to be a congressman, hopefully. And they understand how to read people's needs better than they would otherwise, don't they?
They do. And I mean, like, a thing that I would say is like run for something. We've been working now for 8 years. We have like over 6 folks who have been elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Wow. We have folks who've been elected to statewide office. Garland Gilchrist, who was our first endorsed candidate ever back in 2017. He ran for Detroit City Clerk. He's now the lieutenant governor for the state of Michigan. Wow. And I believe might be running for another statewide office at some point. And so, it can even happen in as soon as 8 years. Yeah. And as you said, these are the future members of Congress, senators, governors, and probably like president at some point, especially given the fact that like we know that we get our bench largely from the state and local level still in the Democratic Party. And, there's stars across the Democratic Party that like we get to see before anyone else does. But I think the thing that I think is really special about this work and has really inspired me is I remember really vividly back in 2017 or late 2016, someone wrote an article that was like, we need like 10,000 Obamas to like run for local office. And I took significant issue with that because there aren't 10. First of all, there are not 10,000 Barack Obamas. There are not 1,000 Barack Obamas. There are not 100 Barack Obamas. He is one of one. Yeah. But that's not what we need. What we need is thousands of people who just give a shit about their communities, who are going to go out there every single day and try to solve the problems of the people who live in their communities. And I think that's what gets me up to do this work every day. That's what's so inspiring about it. Even on a night as bad as the one that we had, last week, about of the races that we've been able to call, we had over 400 races. Run for Something had endorsed in over 400 races on election day. Of the races we've been able to call, over half of our candidates have won. We're at almost 200 candidates who won. And that's pretty consistent for us. Year after year, we get to see at our level of the ballot, regardless of what's happening at the top of the ticket, a lot of our folks are winning. And I think you really spoke to this earlier when you talked about the nonpartisan races. We can win. Democrats, good progressives can win in deep red areas in nonpartisan races where they're just talking about the issues in their local communities. And that's actually what we tell our candidates all the time is like, don't talk about national issues. Right. Like, the Republicans win when we talk about national issues. Like they just do. Talk about the stuff that's going on. Talk about the school. You said it. Talk about the vacant restaurant.
Yep.
Like it's been there on the corner for like 10 years and is finally getting bought by someone because like the city council person put together a deal with another small business, like
Yep.
Those are the kinds of things that people want to see. And those are the kinds of impacts that government can have in their lives. And then, like now that becomes like a thriving small business. And that makes that neighborhood better. People notice that the neighborhood is better. It helps people's property value. It's just like all of the ripple effects that level of the ballot can have, I think, are really significant. And, what I would say is we don't do a very good job always of telling the story of when those things happen and how government impacts people's lives in a positive way. And I think that, we'll probably get into this at some point, but like that is, I think, one of the problems that we often see on the left is like, we're not good at telling those stories. There is, like the Obama era saying that like, we don't spike the football. We need to spike the football. We need to tell people when government delivers for them because they don't know.
Right. Right. And it's funny, I'm laughing here because I opened the show before you joined me talking about what I'm calling mass diversified media environment we're in now, which is I actually opened with a bunch of clips of Trump appearing on the Bro podcast. He did like 9 podcasts in a row for hours. And a lot of us, some of them were funny and kind of mocked it, but he reached a lot of people. Right. And I'm telling my candidates now, and I'm telling my people that I work with, you're not going to get a home run. It's not, like doing the local news, even in a city like where I live in St. Louis, just doing the local news isn't going to, because I don't watch local news. I'm a cable cutter, right? It's going to be the newsletter from your city councilman, his Facebook posts. It's doing that work. There's not just one place where you put information out anymore. And it's going to be, and again, going back to what the theme we've been saying, you learn these things as a local office member. You learn these things very quickly because you get immediate feedback. I remember when I was running for mayor of Peachtree City, it drove my then wife crazy because we couldn't go out to dinner without having an entree, a line, it's like a line would line up. It's like, well, what do you think about this? And you have to have honest conversations. One of the big scandals back then in 1999 or 2001 was that they were building a Walmart in our very, very affluent town. And they wanted to stop it. I said, well, unfortunately, your city council 20 years ago defined big box retail as 25,000 square feet and above, which if you're my age, that was a Walgreens back in the day, or Woolworth, if you will. Target, it was a Venture. That Venture was 25,000 square feet. Well, then you have Walmart, you have Home Depot coming in at 150,000 square feet, right? But unfortunately, it was legal. And I used to tell them, like, we can bankrupt the city fighting a losing battle because our laws allow it, right? Or we can make sure it's the nicest goddamn Walmart you've ever seen, which it ended up being, And if you have to have those hard conversations because you can't get away, they're literally standing at your table, or like you said, you're trying to check out of a store, and you're going to have this conversation. So I do find consistently in the work I've done professionally that those who have local political experience are much better retail politicians, right? They know how to talk to people, even telling them bad news to their face, right?
You have to be able to have real conversations with people. Yeah. I think if you've never had to do that, it is really like the higher up you get, the harder it just sort of like ultimately becomes. And, right. I think the thing that is really important that you get from people who you get this a lot more often from people who start at the local level is you don't want people running for office who don't really know why they're doing it. And except like someone once told them they'd be good at it, or they always thought they wanted to, and so they did, and there's not a real clear rationale. When people start out at the local level, and we found this, we did a bunch of research after 2016, or after, like in 2017, and we found when we asked people like why they were interested in running for office, one of the things we thought we were going to see is people being like, oh, like Donald Trump, like I got mad. What we found is the people who actually decided to run for office, a vast majority of those folks were running because they wanted to solve a very specific problem in their community. Right. And it's really, this is the thing that, I've been in the room with folks who have been thinking about running for president and have run for president, for tiny school boards, actually the Ferguson Florissant School District outside of St. Louis, all sorts of offices, ranging from that all the way up to president. And the thing that I am always consistently telling candidates is your why is the most important thing that exists when you're thinking about running. And if you don't know what it is,
right,
then you shouldn't be doing it. And, I think it often becomes difficult for people to express it. Like they get uncomfortable because it requires vulnerability. Mm-hmm. But like the number one thing I did when I was working like a lot with candidates, and whether I decided I wanted to work with a candidate, is like, could they give me a rationale for why they should be running for this office and why I should be them in the office and not some other person? And, if you look at presidential campaigns, you can tell, like, this is the thing. You can tell when a campaign and a candidate does not have a strong rationale for why it's running for office. And you saw that in the Democratic primary back in 2020. It was part of, honestly, why Joe Biden, I think, won the nomination, is that there weren't that many people who had a really strong and compelling rationale other than him. And, he wasn't in the primary in 2020. He wasn't my person. That's fine. But Donald Trump, for example, has a strong rationale for why he's running for office. And is it real? No, I don't believe him. But like, people do believe him. And he says he wants to make America great again. And that's, like that, to me, that's probably, to be honest, that's probably the best distillation of a why somebody is running for office that I've probably ever seen. And honestly, maybe that we ever will see. It's even better than sort of like Barack Obama's like hope and change piece, because it's actually even more actionable. But yeah, like it's really important for people to know why they're running and have a really strong rationale for it in their own minds.
Couldn't agree more. It's literally when I did my my series before the election of interviews, we called it In the Hot Seat. I told every candidate the first question is your why, and you better have an answer. And I had one lovely young woman who ran, and she was great. And we started the interview off, and it just went horribly wrong. I was like, you know what? Let's stop. I mean, I'll be fair to you because that's not great. And she goes, you're right. I'm nervous. And we went back, and it's important. You have to be able to answer that simple question, the why. I ran for that mayor, and I think I was laughing too because I remember me. And literally the reason I ran for this mayor, this affluent city, right after getting out of the Army the first time, was a simple one. My daughter went to the brand new high school they just built. Brand new high school. Gorgeous, like gorgeous. And they had modular classrooms outside of it when they opened. And I found out the reason was it takes 5 years to build a high school or school in the school board process. And the school board and the city council didn't get along. And since they didn't get along, while the school board was approving schools, the city council was approving new subdivisions and the planning commission. So once the school board said, here's the estimated number of people we're going to need, school. And then the city council said, F you, and added 2-3 more subdivisions with 150 more kids that went to the high school. So by the time they finally got the school built, it was too small. And all because these two elected officials at the local level hated each other over some perceived slight from 10 years ago that I don't give a rip about, right? And that's what made me mad. I wrote a letter to the editor. Next thing I know, like, you should run for office. I'm like, okay, and here we are. And so I get it so much. Now, the reason I invited you on too is I seen some of your tweets that you guys are getting a huge flood of recruits all of a sudden, right? I mean, are you seeing? I mean, since election especially, are you seeing a bump and people stepping up saying, "Oh shit, I got to do something"?
Yeah, I mean, we have, since the election, over 8,000 people have told us that they're interested in running for office. Wow. Which, just like for some context, like after 2016, when Amanda and I first started Run for Something, we like threw a form up on the internet, and had sort of like the kernel of an idea. And we launched on Inauguration Day and said to people like, okay, like if you're interested in running for office, let us know. We thought like maybe 100 people would like sign up in a year. You know, we like that was the scale. We thought about run for something as a side hustle at that point. And then, you know, like 1,000 people signed up in the first day. And, you know, Amanda and I looked at each other and said, like, shit, we got to do right by these people. And then it went from being a side hustle to like a full-time organization. And this time around, like, we're seeing similar types of numbers. You know, I think it took us a few months to get to 10,000 signups last time. We're at almost 8,000 in a week post-election. So there is a lot of energy out there. You know, the vibes are different, clearly, right? Like, the resistance vibes are not quite the same in 2024 as they were in 2016. I think people are a little bit less surprised this time than they were last time. But there's a ton of energy out there. And I think it's really, really inspiring to see folks realizing that like now is the time for them to be stepping up. Especially given the fact that, and I really truly mean this is not hyperbole. The people who get elected and are already elected, the 1,000+ people, like I think we're at over 1,200 people that we've elected since we first got started across the country. Those people and the people that we're going to elect this year and next year and the following year, they're going to save lives. It really is not hyperbole to say that. And it's really inspiring to see people take a lump the way that we did on Tuesday and turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to go do something in my local community. I'm going to run for office. And as you know, you've done it. Running for office is probably one of the hardest things to ask somebody to do in politics. It's not asking them to volunteer. It's not asking them to vote. You're asking them to like put their whole lives on hold, to risk their relationships with their friends and family, to put their job at risk, depending on where they work, and like grind so hard for so long. In order to like make a difference to like the people in their community. And so I'm really deeply inspired by it.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's such a great distillation. That's why I was so excited to hear from you guys, because it was like, I've been saying since day one that we're going to have to start. You know, I had Chris Jones, I'm friends with Chris Jones from Arkansas. We've had him on the show. We interviewed him at the DNC as well. And he and I have been saying the same thing. I'm in Missouri, he's in Arkansas. I was like, it's going to take us a decade or 20 years to take our states back in the direction of being at least purple. But that starts at the local level. It is good, hardworking, progressive thinking people getting elected at the local level before they can go to the next steps. And that's how these abandoned spaces, if you will, of cities and whole counties across huge swaths of America, we're gonna have to take those back at the party, not by winning Congress every time. It's gonna be the small ball. It's gonna be, I hate calling local office the minor leagues, but in many ways in the archive, in the buildup of a political world, it is the minors, and we've got to build up. That's where our talent is hidden and growing and learning, and then we bring them up. So I love it. So what are your priorities as you head into this crazy moment? As you go into this next year and you're getting these candidates, what are you going to be doing, and what are your priorities?
Yeah, I mean, our big priorities remain. I think the thing that's really special about us is like every year our priorities are the same. We're out there recruiting young, diverse, progressive folks all across the country. You know, I think we have some specific programs that we've been running specifically around election administrators. So, for example, in about 20, I think it's like 28-ish states, the people who run our elections are elected officials. We can ask questions about whether it should be that way, but it is that way. And like the MAGA right, Steve Bannon folks have been out there trying to recruit, honestly, anti-democracy folks to run for those offices for a long time. So we've been doing that for the last couple of years. We have a lot of programs at the school board level. We're working a lot in state legislatures. I think like we're going to do a lot around municipal and county work going forward, because, like those counties and cities are places where we can do a lot to push back against like the Trump agenda at the local level.
Great.
But, like our charge and our mission remains unchanged, and it was going to, regardless of who got elected president. I think the urgency of the moment has, ramped up significantly. But, like Wisconsin has their filing deadlines on January 7th, for example.
Wow.
I think Texas has filing deadlines in December this year.
Wow.
So, and I always bring up Texas. I am from Texas originally. I identify as a Texan. I did also live in we didn't talk about this before the show, but I also lived in St. Louis for a period of time.
Oh, I did not know that. Welcome.
Yeah. I loved my couple. I spent 2 years there and I loved it. So, I know firsthand like what it's like to be in a place where you've got to rebuild from the bottom.
Yep.
Like cycle after cycle. I think there was a lot of folks who thought we were going to do better in Texas than we did. Texas is one of those places where we're not going to see it coming. Somebody will win at the statewide level and flip a seat blue, whether it's governor, lieutenant governor, Senate, something, attorney general, but we're not going to see it coming. And it's going to be the result of a lot of hard work that people have been putting in over the last 20 or 30 years. I know that, and I think the thing that is unique for people who are from red states know this, but not everyone is from a red state. Progress isn't linear.
No.
You take 2 steps forward and you're going to take 5 steps back. The party is going to build a really awesome apparatus, and then they're going to lose an election and everyone's going to get tossed out and we're going to have to rebuild from scratch. Or the party was incompetent and did incompetent things for like years and get tossed out, and then new people come in. It's just, none of this work is linear. We have to be doing it every single year. And I think the even more important part is we need to be running people everywhere, even when we know we can't win a seat. Somebody running in a county, like in a rural county where, maybe there's like a few thousand Democrats, those races are just important as the ones that are competitive to make sure we have candidates in, because it's important for us to show people what it looks like to be like not crazy, just be totally honest.
And have choice. Otherwise you
and have someone knock on their door. Right. And have someone knocking on their door and being like, hey, I'm your neighbor. I've lived in this community my entire life too. Like, I have the same experience as you do. I come at this from a different perspective and I'm not crazy. And like, this is how I think about things. And sure, is that going to change people's, like, huge numbers of people's minds, like in one election cycle? No, but if we keep running those folks in those places over and over and over again over a decade, does it start to make a real difference? It does.
Yeah, and it starts today. Final question. I know you got to go. Where can our folks find us? Where listeners and viewers find you? And folks, I'm going to make a plug here and donate, because off years are hard. All of us who work in this business, who are building the future, is not an off year for Run for Something at all. Obviously, if you've got following, if all you're doing is local stuff, 30 states. So Ross, most important question in the interview for our friends here at the MeidasTouch, everyone elsewhere, where can they find you? Where can they throw you a couple of dollars to make sure you guys do your important work?
You can go to runforsomething.net and click the little contribute button in the top right. Or if you want to run for office, you're interested in running for office, go to runforwhat.net. Again, that's runforwhat.net if you want to run. If you want to contribute, go to runforsomething.net.
Well, there you go. When we got to do it. Well, I appreciate you coming on such short notice and talking about this important mission. We're going to have to stay in touch, and we'll talk some more.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good luck.
This is great. Man,
stay in the fight. Appreciate it. Man, it was a great conversation, and goes right to what I was saying, right? I was laughing the whole time, smiling, because this is what I'm telling you, folks. We've got to get back in the fight. I know you don't want to. I know you're tired. You certainly don't want to have text messages coming or fundraising pleas, but we can't take a break anymore. There's not going to be a 2-year break between elections. If we really do believe we're fighting for the future of our nation, that fight is now. It is now. I'm an old soldier. When you lose a battle, you don't just, hey, we lost that one. Can we take a break for a minute? We just need a break to pause. And no, because the enemy is going to keep fighting, and they are. January 20th, they've got a plan. On the day Trump takes office, they have massive plans. Schedule F goes into effect. Deportations begin. They are planned. Tariffs begin on everything. And so if we are sitting here licking our wounds or feeling sorry for ourselves, we will lose even more. We have to get back in the fight. And that's why I'm so passionate about these 30 states having local elections. We've got to win Virginia, New Jersey, and send a message. Just like when Glenn Youngkin won Virginia 3 years ago, it sent a message. We have to do that. We have to put Abigail Spanberger in office and show them that we're not taking this lightly, that we're not rolling over to the forces against us and our forces against democracy. So there you have it. Other news, a lot of exciting things going on. Obviously, with the change, it wasn't what I was planning on doing with my life. It was fighting Trump for another 4 years, but here we are. I think our work is more important than ever. Our community that we've built around this show and around our Substack and everywhere else is so important. So you're going to see a lot more activity in our Substack. I don't know if you've noticed, I've been putting out something almost every single day right now, and I plan to continue that. I'm finding a lovely community building very fast. One of the reasons that community on Substack's building, if you could put the address for our Substack up, man, FP Wellman on Substack. I'm FP Wellman everywhere. The reason you're finding so many people joining us is because the exodus, they're calling it, from Twitter/X. I am going to be one of those people leaving at some point. I have begun the process of paring down my presence there, and I probably will leave soon. The fact is, almost everything I post on Twitter/X now is brigaded by bots and hatred that's beyond measure, and it's just bad for the soul. I can't even see the nice people who are followers and fans who I like because the replies are absolutely flooded with the most disgusting vitriol and hate you can imagine. And even a guy like me who could take a lot is just sick and tired of being called names and disgusting DMs and everything else. Elon Musk's goal was to turn that into a shithole. He has succeeded. So find me at Blue Sky. Blue Sky is taking off. They've had over 1 million subscribers in the last week. I'm FP Wellman there, fpwellman.bluesky.app, I think. We'll throw that on the screen too, but I am loving it. I've already had the honor and privilege to have so many of you join me there. If you're looking and thinking about it, I would recommend trying out Blue Sky. The moderation's real, and people get nuked just for trolling. And it's what they call the nuclear block. Once they're blocked, they can't see your shit. They can't reply to your stuff. They can't quote tweet it. It is done. And I'm loving it. I've already had a couple of MAGAs come at me, and they are gone. And I'm not going to put up with it anymore. And you shouldn't have to put up with it. We can have decent conversation. I'm happy to have a decent conversation with anybody. I'm happy to talk. But if you're going to call me the most vile names, I'm sorry. I'm too old for that shit. And you are too. So enough of that. So find us there. The really exciting news is we're going to start doing live streams for the On Democracy Network. So you'll start seeing as early as next week live shows going on. I'll experiment with the time so we can settle down on when those will be. But I'm expecting it's probably as early as Tuesday. We'll start going on the On Democracy YouTube channel, On Democracy Podcast on YouTube, On Democracy Podcast, and my other social channels that are available to do some live streams. We'll talk about the news of the day, maybe interview a friend or so, but take your questions is the biggest thing. Have conversations with you. We'll live stream and use the StreamYard, so I'll be able to see your comments. We can talk. I'm really excited about doing that. It's been something I want to do for a while. And of course, this moment, the change in plans kind of drives it. So we're going to have some conversations. I hope you'll join our community. The best way to keep track of that is go to On Democracy Podcast at YouTube and subscribe there. Even if you're a MeidasTouch member, go to On Democracy Podcast and subscribe so you can catch those live streams when they come on, our shorts and new content that we're putting up. And I would just love you to join us at Substack. You don't have to pay. You'll get all the content for free, but I do love people who pay because they do fund all this. All of this does cost money. Contrary to what MAGA says, I'm not making millions. I am making a living, if you will. So if you do have the wherewithal to be a paid subscriber, it means the world to me, and I appreciate it more than you can imagine. So with all that, great conversation today. I hope you understand the points I'm trying to make, that in this mass diversified media environment, it's not enough just to go to one place to try and get your message. You heard Ross say it too. You're going to have to get good at using social media. You're going to have to be good at going on podcasts that may or may not have anything to do with politics even. You're going to have to go to places where our viewers and our Americans are living. If they're watching a wrestling podcast and they get to hear from the President of the United States, that's a really good thing. And our elected officials and their staff need to understand that. And it's going to be more work. I would encourage, like I encouraged a certain presidential candidate, they could put that person in a room on a Zoom like this, and they could do, in 2 hours, they could do 20 interviews, for goodness sake. It's work, but it's worth it because you'll reach more people. So all of you who watch this show and become part of our community, I appreciate you. I appreciate being part of the MeidasTouch network and everything else we do. This is the place we're going to keep having conversations about what we have to do to maintain our republic and our democracy. And I hope you'll be part of it. With that, we'll see you next week.